Welcome to our community. Very serious topic, hard to talk about topic today, but important topic to talk about. We're speaking with Molly McMath, who is the Executive Director of Compass Rape Crisis Services for Tuscarawas and Carroll County. Good morning, Molly.
Good morning.
For one thing, let's get to know you better. What brought you to Compass?
Well, my background is in individual and family studies. And my senior year of college, I did an internship with domestic violence. And through that internship, I came to just really enjoy working with victims of crime. I felt that the men and women that I had worked with were just so courageous, so strong, and it was just so wonderful to see them get that power back. And so upon graduation, I worked for a domestic violence program here in the state of Ohio. And I really enjoyed that work, and I did that for a couple of years. But then my husband and I moved back home to Tuscarawas County, and it just happened that Compass was having an opening at the time for their executive director position. And that's how I came to work here in the rape crisis field.
I think it's so interesting, and we forget, don't we, when we're talking about domestic violence, you speaking about men and women who have been victims of domestic violence. We forget that violence is not a respecter of genders, that this could be a man's problem as much as a woman's problem. You want to touch on that a bit?
Certainly. You're absolutely correct. Rape, domestic violence, any crime, it's not about the gender. It's going to happen to men, women, children of any age, of any socioeconomic class. Violence is about power and control, and that's what we always try to relate to people about rape. This is about power and control over another person. It's an act of violence, and it's a crime. When we talk about rape being a women's issue, by doing that, it causes us not to look at the whole population. So, yes, on average, women tend to be more likely to be victimized by rape than men, but we certainly have male victims. And on the flip side of that, if you look at who's perpetrating the violence, men, along with some women, are perpetrating violence. So if we really want to stop rape, we have to include men. We have to say that this is an issue for everyone. And we need the help from men to really step up and show what men of strength means and to be good role models for our young boys.
It's very difficult, isn't it, to have victims come forth and say, this happened to me, because sometimes the victim is victimized yet again. And I'm thinking of the very recent story in the news about the young man who was a swimmer in college, and judge gave him a very light sentence. And here's a woman who was unconscious, who was violated, having to have no memory of what happened because she was unconscious, and trying to prove that she was a victim all at the same time. Can you talk to that?
When someone is victimized by rape and they decide to come forward, that is a huge step. Rape is one of the most underreported crimes that there is because it's so hard to talk about. And so when a victim comes forward, all they want to know is that they're being believed, that somebody is there that's going to believe them and to support them. And I think as a society, it's very difficult for us to believe that someone may have been raped in our community, especially when you're talking, Tuscarawas and Carroll County, we are, rural communities, very family-oriented, and it becomes very difficult to believe that someone we may know has been a victim of rape.
Yes.
And so we go to that mindset of, well, were you drinking? What did you have on? Are you sure you didn't give the wrong signal to him? And what that does is tells the victim, maybe you had something to do with it. Maybe you are partly to blame.
That for some reason they caused this.
Correct. And all that does is take the blame off the perpetrator and puts it on the victim.
Right.
And that's what we can't do. We have to support these victims. Just believe them. That's the big thing. They just want to be believed.
Yes. All right. Well, let's get to Compass. What kinds of services then do you offer to be able to help these victims? And do you offer anything that is able to help turn around or rehabilitate a perpetrator?
Well, Compass offers a number of services to residents of Tuscarawas and Carroll counties. The first one is we have a 24-hour hotline. So any person that has been victimized by rape, or maybe a family member or loved one has, and they just need someone to talk to, can absolutely reach out to us on our 24-hour hotline.
What is that? Let's give that.
That number is 330-339-1427.
Great. All right. We'll give that a few times today because that's important. Okay. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Not at all. We also have advocates available to provide support to victims going through the criminal justice system. And this can start as early as when they go to the hospital for a rape kit. That's a very difficult time. It's a very scary time. And advocates are available to come and provide support during that hospital exam. Our advocates can then provide assistance all the way through, from sitting with victims at police interviews to going to court and being a support system during all the court hearings and meetings with prosecutors and whatever their case entails.
And I'm thinking again, how difficult it is for a person to have to tell that story over and over and over again. How often do they, first of all? And second, is there a way to record it so they would only have to tell it once, or to just be able to get it over with so that they're not having to say it again and again and relive the horror of it over and over?
You know, unfortunately, they do have to tell their story many times to many different people. And you can imagine, details of a sexual assault like that are very personal and sometimes can seem very embarrassing to the victim. And so to have to continuously tell that story over and over, it takes courage and it takes strength. And we need to really be there and support these victims when they decide to go that route.
So what Compass provides then is someone to be there with them to help them through that process, because it sounds lengthy and it sounds torturous.
That's correct. We want to give a shout out to our law enforcement and our prosecutor's office. They do try to make it as easy for the victims as possible. But again, we're talking about just a very painful story that they have to tell. And so our advocates are just there to provide them moral support and guidance so that they don't feel alone, that they feel that there's somebody there in their corner. Unfortunately, they do have to tell it many times. And with any type of investigation, they have to look at what can you remember. So you can imagine the frustration when a victim can't remember their story.
Right.
And people are asking her to remember it. They're also making sure that nothing changes in her story, which, again, you're in crisis mode. So it can sometimes be very difficult to keep everything straight of what happened in what order.
And also, you were traumatized. So I'm thinking it would be very difficult to not be fuzzy on certain ways, because I think our brains would try to shut down at some point to not have those memories. So
and
to be
that
able...
is a very common reaction.
So how do you help them through that?
Again, I think patience plays a big part in just trying to be patient with the victims. They're trying to remember as much as they can, and sometimes you just have to let them go at their pace. The human mind, it's just an amazing thing, and sometimes it works to protect its own self from the memories. So we just really need to be patient and let them go at their speed.
Which is difficult when there's a prosecutor or somebody working for the defense of the person who committed this crime, who who is coming at you with those questions that you said. What were you wearing? What does this text mean? Those questions making the victim seem like the criminal.
Correct.
Whew. All right. Well, let's go back to what Compass provides, what you are doing for supporting people who've gone through this in Carroll and Tuscarawas County.
So, like I said, we did have the hotline, the advocacy. We also offer support groups for those that have been traumatized by sexual violence. We also offer assistance for those who have been victimized by either sexual violence, domestic violence, or stalking. We can help them through the process of applying for a civil protection order. And that protects them, basically petitioning the court, asking that they keep their perpetrator away. So we can help victims who would like to seek a protection order. We can help them go through that process.
Compass has been around for how long, Molly?
Next year we will be celebrating our 20th anniversary.
Wow. And I'm thinking people, fortunately, don't know about you because they haven't need to know about you. But this is important that they do know that you've been serving the community for so long, and you do have plans now to stretch up into Stark County. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So beginning July 1st, Compass will be taking over the Rape Crisis Services in Stark County. The Rape Crisis Services are currently being provided by the American Red Cross, and they have done an amazing job, and we are so appreciative of all the work they've done over the years serving victims of sexual violence. But due to some changes within their organization, they will be handing off those Rape Crisis Services to Compass, and we will begin offering those services through Compass on July 1st.
Where does your funding come from?
The majority of our funding comes through grants, through both federal and state funding. We also get some funding through local donations, and then we are a subsidiary of Goodwill Industries, and so, of course, they help to support us financially as well.
Okay, so you would be a 501c3. People could donate to you if they see this as something they would really like to support your efforts?
Absolutely.
How would they go about doing that?
They can give our office a call. If they want to talk about that, they can designate how they want their donation to be spent. Or if they just want to mail in a check, they can send it to our P.O. box.
What about volunteers? You have opportunities?
We rely very much on volunteers. Currently, we have 6 positions here in our agency. So 6 people to run a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week agency. We desperately rely on our volunteers, and we are always looking for people who have an interest in and a compassion for people who have been victimized.
And what kind of training is available for volunteers?
We provide a very lengthy training. So each of our volunteers who will be going on the crisis line and going to the hospital receive 40 hours of crisis intervention training, and then they have a time where they shadow and accompany trained advocates before going out on their own. So we really try to make sure that all volunteers feel comfortable before answering any calls on their own.
We're speaking with Molly McMath. She's Executive Director of Compass Rape Crisis Center. We'll be back with more with Molly after these words. You're listening to Our Community.